Hello everyone and welcome to part 8 of my Jets Connected franchise on the Xbox One here on Klein92 TV. We are going into week 16 of the NFL regular season. This is the last episode of this series that will be in season 1. After this we will hopefully be going into the playoffs. So I'm showing you the standings in the AFC, and despite us having a 10-4 record, we do not stand at the top of our division. We are still behind the Buffalo Bills, who are ahead of us by just half a game. They have one tie and they are 10-3-1 while we are 10-4. So if we can win this game up against our division rivals, the New England Patriots, we will have a chance to hopefully take our division and maybe be a top 2 team in the AFC and get a bye in the first round. So this game is being played in New York. We will be getting the ball at the start of it. We have Jacoby Ford back, and he has not been producing that well up until this point in the season. I don't think we have had a kick return for a touchdown yet, and we're going to try to fix that in this game. So here is the kick. It is going to the 10-yard line. Ford gets it. He's running to the right. He's going to cut out to the left, and the same trick works. If you guys remember last year in Madden 13, I would constantly go to the outside on kick returns, and it works just as well in this year's game. So while the gameplay is going on in the background of this video, I want to talk a little bit about the question I asked you guys in the last part of this series. In my last video, I asked you guys who are your top 5 quarterbacks of all time, and I want to read off just a couple of my favorite answers. So here is one. It is by the user SneakerSoul25, and he said number 5 was Johnny Unitas, and that is someone that I forgot to put on my list entirely. But even though I forgot about him, I do not think he would have made my list. 4, he had John Elway. 3, Peyton Manning. 2, Tom Brady, and 1, Joe Montana. Joe Montana seems to be the common number 1 amongst most people. One thing that did surprise me about his list was how he put Tom Brady above Peyton Manning, because I noticed that most people actually put Manning above Brady when I expected that to be more of a controversy. And the one other response that I want to read is from the user Amber Smith, and he had a very unique top 5. His number 5 was actually Drew Brees, someone that I would not even consider putting in the top 5 of all time. Number 4 was Tom Brady. 3 was Joe Montana. 2 was Peyton Manning, and 1 was Steve Young. I didn't even have Steve Young on my list, and he's at the number 1 spot on his list. I cannot agree with most of these. Putting Drew Brees at number 5 I think is a bit of a stretch. Yes, I would probably put him in the top 20, but I do not feel like he has accomplished enough in his career to really be in the top 5. Tom Brady at number 4 I can understand. Joe Montana being at number 3 I do not get. He deserves to be in the top 2, and Steve Young at number 1 does not make sense. He should definitely be below Joe Montana. So last episode I talked about my top 5 quarterbacks of all time. This episode I want to talk about my top 5 running backs of all time, and this list was definitely more difficult to compose, and that is because there are so many great running backs in NFL history, and there are some great quarterbacks too, but it's easier to narrow down those guys just because it's kind of obvious which ones had more success than others. So at the number 5 spot on my list, I have Marshall Faulk. Faulk played for 2 teams over the course of his career, the Rams and I think the Colts as well. He was the running back for the greatest show on turf, and he had an extremely successful career in terms of his statistics. He was the first running back ever to get 1,000 yards rushing and receiving in the same season, and a statistic like that was just unheard of before Marshall Faulk. At the number 4 spot on my list, I have a little bit of a shocker. I have Emmitt Smith. Yes, I know that Emmitt Smith is a Super Bowl champion, and yes, I know that he does have the league's all-time record for rushing yards, so many would think that he would be higher up on this list. But when you look at his career in its entirety, he did have a successful career, but there were players that either had a greater impact on the game that were running backs, or there were players that could have taken one of those records from him if they had stayed in the NFL as long as he did. Moving along to number 3 on my list, picking the top 3 for me was probably the most difficult because I knew the 3 guys that I wanted to have in the top 3. It was just difficult placing them in order from 1 to 3. So at the number 3 spot, I have Walter Payton. Walter Payton is definitely a top 3 running back of all time. He played for the Chicago Bears. He was on both the 1970s and 1980s all-decades team, so that just goes to show that he is one of the best running backs from those decades. And on top of that, he did retire with the leading rushing record in the NFL, and that was later passed by Emmitt Smith. I had an extremely difficult time picking the number 1 from the number 2 running backs. Obviously, my top 2 are Barry Sanders and Jim Brown. I just did not know which one to put where, and I thought about it for a little bit. Yes, Jim Brown is the historic player that everybody looks to as the best running back of all time, but I want to make a case to why I think Barry Sanders is actually the best running back of all time. Don't get me wrong, they're both phenomenal players, but I do have my reasons for putting Barry above Jim Brown. The first reason why I put him above Brown was the team that he was surrounded by. Barry Sanders was surrounded by an atrocious Lions team. They absolutely could not get anything done as an entire unit, and their offensive line was just absolutely terrible. Looking back at those plays that Barry Sanders was running, he was constantly being chased down by players because their offensive line was so atrocious. And despite being on such a terrible team, Barry Sanders was still able to get numerous achievements, and there were 2 statistics that I saw about Barry Sanders that really intrigued me. The first one was that he went 2 consecutive seasons without having a single fumble, and I think that's a really big accomplishment, especially when you consider how terrible his offensive line was. And the other statistic that I found pretty interesting was that he had 4 consecutive seasons where he had 1,500 yards rushing or more, and that really just goes to show how consistent he was. Jim Brown, on the other hand, he did have a lot of rushing yards. He had 1,000 yards rushing every year with the exception of 1 throughout his entire career, and that's a pretty big deal. He also averaged 5 yards per carry, which is a huge accomplishment for your entire career. But at the same time, Brown played in a different era of the NFL. Brown played in an era where running was the center of your offense. Quarterbacks in the era that Jim Brown played did not pass the ball nearly as much as they have in the past 20 to 30 years. So given the circumstances that Barry Sanders was in with his team as well as the era that he played in, you can make the argument that overall he was a better running back. So now I want to get into the gameplay of this video. We are in the 4th quarter against the Patriots, and it is just a 3-point game. We're making a drive down the field, giving it to Arian Foster up the middle, and Foster just had a phenomenal performance. We were able to run the ball so effectively this entire game. Now he's running it again, almost picking up a first down on 2nd and 10, 3rd and 6 from the 15-yard line. I'm going to do a pass here. If we get a touchdown, we could take a 10-point lead, and Charles Clay in the back of the end zone. An amazing passing catch by Geno Smith and Charles Clay. That is an extremely strong connection in this team. And now we have a 10-point lead on the Patriots. Under 4 minutes left, and Tom Brady is going to try to lead a drive downfield, try to make it a 1-possession game. Now here's Brady. He's going to try to do a screen pass. We cover the screen, and he gets tackled at the 20-yard line. 4th and 19 is not stopping the Patriots from going it. Brady is back, and he gets sacked at the 13. The Jets will take the ball, and any score here will really put away the game. Foster is heading up the middle. He picks up the first down all the way to the 2-yard line. 2nd and goal. We're going to give it to Foster. He's going to jump over the lineman and get into the end zone. That gives us a 17-point lead. What a change of events in just the last 5 minutes of this game, and that will sum up this game. Your final score is 17-34. Geno Smith was able to show up clutch when he needed to, and the same goes for our defense. So after this game, our record will be boosted to 11-4. I'm going to simulate the next game of this season, and if we win that, there's a chance we could go into the playoffs with a bye in the wild card round, and that would definitely help out this team. Here are your final game highlights. Our key player in this game was definitely Arian Foster. He had around 3 touchdowns, I know, and one of those touchdowns was 40+ yards. So after this game, the question remains, how well will the Jets perform in the playoffs? We're still unsure of what our seed will be, but I really think we can make a deep playoff run. I'm not completely sure if we are a Super Bowl contender just yet, but I do feel like we can make a strong run. Like I said, there is our record. We are 11-4. I'm going to simulate the game up against the 3-12 Dolphins. We better win this game. We are by far the better team, and we come out with the win. The New York Jets have locked up the number 1 seed in the AFC with a record of 12-4. The Bills are the 2nd best team, but because we are in the same division, they will have to be a wild card team. So next, I'm going to show you guys the games that will be played in the wild card round. You have the Ravens and Chiefs, Redskins and Saints, Bills and Colts, and lastly the Seahawks and the Packers. So I'm going to simulate the wild card bye week. That way you guys know who we're playing in the next round. So it's simulating right here. I'm hoping we're going to play an easy team, and look who we end up playing. We are playing the Baltimore Ravens, the team that we actually faced in the Super Bowl last year in my St. Louis Rams series. So I hope you guys had a fun time watching this video. Be sure to have a great day. God bless you guys.